Hello farmers and aspiring farmers. My name is Wadzanai Manyore, coming to you today from the premises of the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Water and Rural Development right here in Zimbabwe. This is the very first edition where we are going to be looking at cattle rustling here in Zimbabwe. You would find that generally livestock is a sign of wealth to our communal farmers, which needs to be guarded jealously. Unfortunately, most of our Zimbabwean farmers fall prey to some of the robberies and thievery activities that take place, especially to those provinces and those areas that are close to the Zimbabwean borders. We have a lot of farmers losing in thousands of dollars due to them being falling victim to thieves and robbers. Though some of them that even cross the border to places like Botswana, Mozambique with their cattle. Like I've highlighted earlier, the name of the program is Agribusiness in support of Vision 2030, where we talk about business fundamentals in the agricultural sector here in Zimbabwe. This is where we discuss production economics, how to be viable in your enterprises as a Zimbabwean farmer, as we pave way towards achieving Vision 2030 as a country. Now we are going to be joined by Professor Jiri. He is the Chief Director Advisory Services in this very ministry. Stay tuned. As I have highlighted earlier, to talk about cattle rustling today, I have taken the liberty of inviting Professor Jiri. He is the Chief Director, Agricultural and Rural Development Advisory Services. Professor Jiri, thank you for making time for us today.
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
As we get into our discussion, some might want to know, what is cattle rustling? What will be taking place exactly?
So cattle rustling is basically people stealing cattle. That's the long and short of it. In terms of what they do is that the rustlers, they just go into an area and get cattle that don't belong to them. After that, they go and find buyers. So normally these are people who are well connected, who know where the cattle are needed or where meat is needed, and then they go to an area where they know the cattle are. So it doesn't matter whether it's a few cattle involved or it's many cattle involved. The fact of the matter is that there is no agreement between the owner of the cattle and the one that is taking the cattle for whatever reason that they are taking them for.
Okay, now Professor Jiri, you are working with the rural communities here in the ministry. Can you maybe enlighten our audience there at home, those provinces or those areas that are vulnerable or susceptible to cattle rustling in Zimbabwe?
So all communities are really vulnerable. As long as they are cattle, there are always thieves or rustlers who want to harvest where they did not sow, as it were. But most prevalent provinces are basically those drier regions where they're keeping large numbers of cattle. So Matabeleland South, Matabeleland North, those are the usual places where rustlers really take the route and do their things in a much professional way. So they are known areas where the rustlers take the cattle to. There are known areas where the rustlers conduct their businesses. So in those areas where there is really prevalent like that, the rustlers are known. The areas where the cattle are being taken to are known. There are places where you can really, if you lose your cattle and you track them, you find that the cattle are going in a certain direction. And you know that if they go there, they have been taken by rustlers, and therefore it's a no-go area because you will not find them or you will not be able to recover them. But even in the Mashonaland provinces, you also have rustlers doing their work, but the numbers involved will be much smaller, and the prevalence is also occasional. So it's not as prevalent as you find in the actual provinces where it's dry, and cattle is the main business. So Mashingo, the dry parts of Mashingo, the Matabeleland South, Matabeleland North, those are the hot spots for cattle rustling.
Okay, now Professor Jiri, you would find that to curb or to control this scenario that is there whereby farmers are losing their wealth in form of livestock, it is a collective effort. I understand that there are certain government departments that you are also working with to ensure the safety of the farmers' investments. Can you maybe highlight them as the Ministry of Lands? Which other departments are you working with?
Yes, it's a concerted effort. And definitely not one department can win the war against cattle rustling. So, because it's an illegal act, definitely the law enforcement agents become very active. So the police is a critical component to curb cattle rustling, but also controlling the movement of cattle. So if somebody is supposed to be moving cattle from one area to the next, they should have permits to move. They should be cleared by vets. They should be cleared by the police. So that makes sure that the movement is now controlled. If there is no such control, then it will be very difficult to curb cattle rustling. But basically, the law enforcement agents as well as the veterinary department are key departments that help in this scenario.
Okay, generally as the ministry, I understand that we do have extension workers working hand in glove with the farming community wherever they might be it in Karoi, be it in Matebeleland. What is the ministry's position, or what is the gospel that the Ministry of Lands is preaching to our farming community in terms of this scenario that is there, this mishap that is there?
So we are really looking at increasing the livestock head and increasing the cattle head. That's why we are there. That's why the Department of Livestock Production and Development is established to make sure that we have increase in the number of cattle to start with, and then we can measure the other indicators. So our position is that we don't want cattle rustling, because by nature it then decimates our cattle. Whilst our ethos is to really increase the numbers, because from the increase in numbers, that's when we can start to count the wealth. But the cattle rustlers then come to decimate, so they are really working against what we are working for.
Okay.
So in terms of what we are doing, we don't want cattle rustling. That's the long and short of it.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was very detailed and straight to the point. On that note, viewers, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment. Stay tuned. Thank you, Zimbabwe, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, in support of Vision 2030. Now we are talking of becoming an upper middle class economy by year 2030, and generally the majority of Zimbabweans make a living off of their agricultural ventures. And when we talk of agricultural enterprises, we cannot ignore the pivotal role of livestock or cattle ranching or cattle rearing. You would find that most of our Zimbabwean farmers do create wealth through livestock or cattle rearing, but then there is a threat that is coming in through cattle rustling, which is the anchor of today's episode. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with the producer, Wadzanai Manyore. It's on 0772 807 506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Leave your comments and suggestions on our Twitter handle. It's at Agribusiness110. Make a follow-up on this episode and more. In case you miss it on TV, it's on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. Professor Jiri, we are here in the second segment of our program. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you, Wadzanai.
Yes, we were talking of earlier on the position of the ministry in terms of the gospel that you are preaching through maybe your agricultural extension officers. Taking your attention from that a bit, can we talk about the detrimental effects of cattle rustling, be it to our farming community, the agricultural value chain, and the economy of Zimbabwe as a whole?
So yes, in terms of cattle rustling, what is happening there is that you are reducing the number of cattle. So if you look at the family level or the farm level, it means that when a farmer is embarked on an enterprise, a cattle producing enterprise, and then they are planning their month, they are planning their year, they are planning their cash flows. And remember, the cattle are a live asset, which has value. So the farmer is really working on a balance sheet, as it were, and a cash flow, as it were, and then suddenly part of that is just removed.
It vanishes into thin air.
It vanishes. So you wake up in the morning and there are no more cattle. Your assets are gone. So this is the pain that the farmers really go through. So at the farm level, you find that it's disturbing an entire business. It's like when your shop is looted. That's the same thing with cattle rustling. So if a thief comes to your shop and they steal, you wake up and then you start counting your losses to say, I've lost this and this and this. For cattle, for example, you are really counting the beasts because there are kgs which can be converted to meat and money. So when you wake up and then the cattle are not there, it means that you have lost your money. Your cash flow is gone, your balance sheet is gone, your assets are gone. So this is what the farmer goes through when rustlers hit on them. But when you go to the economy, remember we are working on developing our agriculture to an 8.5 billion economy.
Yes.
And part of that is really major is the livestock section, and the cattle make up a huge chunk of that. In fact, in terms of our cattle in the country, we have 5.6 million at the last count, 5.6 million cattle out there, and the more they are reduced by cattle rustling, it means that we are really reducing value to the economy. In other ways, the livestock economy is reduced, and that means that we will not be able to attain the livestock economy that we want. So in terms of actual economic contribution, it's very significant. You are talking of maybe in most cases you find it's 1 or 2 cattle, because mostly what gets reported is the cattle that is the rustling that happens on a very, very small scale. But when you go to Mateville in south there, west of Gwanda, you start hearing of big numbers where a farmer can lose 35 head of cattle to cattle rustling in a single day.
Okay.
So you send your headmen out in the morning, heading cattle, and then in the evening they come back without anything. So you're talking of those huge numbers. So imagine when you lose 35 head, and this is just one person, and you count the number of cattle farmers that are out there in Mateville and South, Mateville and North. These are huge numbers. They keep large numbers of cattle. And when you lose 35 head, when you lose 40 head, 20 head of cattle, those are real numbers that you are starting to talk about.
Yes.
And that's really reducing the business of farming in those areas. So it's not a pleasant situation when we start talking about the economics of livestock rearing, and with these people who just come and reap where they did not sow.
Now, Professor Jiri, that was very detailed. I want us to dive deeper into our discussion with roughly an estimated figure, be it the number of cattle per year, say approximately in last year, 2022 or 2021. I understand that we also have losses due to diseases and certain occurrences. But when it comes to rustling, how much are we looking at as a country?
It's a very difficult figure to zero in on. But I will give you a scenario, for example, in Mateville and South there, where people can really lose large heads of cattle. So you are talking of a single farmer losing 20 head and so forth. So when you convert that per year, it comes to several thousands of cattle. In comparison, January disease, for example, over the last 2 years, we have lost about 500,000 cattle to January disease. I think that cattle rustling is second to January disease. If you make that comparison, you will find that we are actually losing several thousands of our cattle to thieves or to rustlers who are just a menace, particularly in the cattle ranching areas.
Thank you so much, Professor Jiri. On that note, viewers, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more on cattle rustling in the third and final segment. Stay tuned. It is a pleasure having you with us, viewers, today. We are here in the third and final segment of your program, Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, in support of Vision 2030. We are talking of becoming an upper middle class economy, and one way that we can do that is through agriculture, given that well over 67% of our population makes a living off of agricultural ventures. However, there are threats in the agricultural industry. We are talking of cattle rustling today. Professor Jiri, we are in the final segment of our program. Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you.
What are some of those activities that our Zimbabwean farmers might be engaging in unknowingly that might attract or result them in falling into prey to the cattle rustlers?
Yeah, so yes, it's not one practice, but let me start by saying that the Zimbabwean economy is agricultural based.
Yes.
And the agriculture is the mainstay of the economy. But livestock is the backbone of agriculture.
Yes.
So that will give you the perspective. When we are talking of livestock, yes, they need to be tended to. And I think in terms of strategies, it will really be to secure the paddocks. That's the first thing. So farmers should have proper structures where they are keeping cattle and where they can count the cattle. So you remember in the past we used to have all these deep tanks. They are still there. I think about 4,000 of them deep tanks. Those are good areas to count your cattle.
Yes.
If you don't have a cattle race, you can count there at the deep tank and make sure that if you are keeping a large number of cattle, you need a way of knowing that my 1,000 cattle are still there.
Yes.
My 100 cattle are still there. Because if you don't count, you may never know what you have lost. So you need to be able to count them. So farmers should be able to secure their livestock. Good paddocks, good infrastructure for livestock, and also good facilities for counting their cattle so that they are able to know if they lose anything. But apart from that, they need people who are tending to the cattle. So the headman must be trained well in stockmanship. Mm-hmm. Because keeping your cattle and avoiding dangerous places is part of the stockmanship. So that is very important to have a proper and properly trained headman. And in some areas you find, especially in the rural areas, and here when we're talking of the rural areas, you find in the dry regions where livestock keeping is the mainstay. It's the family boys and girls who are sent to tend the cattle. And so farmers must avoid sending the young ones who may not be able to resist or fight off the rustlers. Because on a large scale, rustlers don't come to kill and take meat. They come to take whole beasts and drive them off. Mm-hmm. That is what they do. So if you send a small boy, the rustlers would know that that family is sending this small boy every afternoon when the boy comes from school, and that becomes something that it becomes vulnerable. So you really need to make sure that your headsmen are mature people who are probably trained and who are able also to fight off these rustlers. I think those are some of the things that a farmer can ordinarily do. But the key issue is security.
Okay. Now, what would you advise our farming community in terms of the steps to take? You would find that in some areas, we still have those with primitive mindsets who would say, you know what, what can a farmer do when this happens to him or her?
Yeah, so when you wake up and you find your cattle are missing, it's like missing any other asset. You must report it to the police. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing that you should do. But because it's agricultural, you also need to report to the agricultural extension officers, or now we call them the agricultural business advisors. So you need to report there as well to make sure that they take record. And also advise your veterinary extension officer, because they are usually just there in the areas. So those 3 reports must be made if we are to be able to really say what steps can you take. So report to the police, report to vet, report to Agritech. Those are 3 critical institutions where you must report to.
Okay, finally we are closing our episode, Prof. Jiri. Can we talk about maybe your word of advice, your recommendations to our farming community? I understand there are issues surrounding insurance. They might be trackers. Some are putting trackers on their cattle, on their livestock. Your word of advice in general. At the end of the day, we need to remain profitable and viable in our ventures. What would you say to our Zimbabwean farming community that are tuned in?
So, as we are saying, the cattle rearing is a business. So rustlers, they are coming there because they are seeing your business thriving. Whether you have 1 head or you have 10, they are seeing that there is wealth there. That's why they are coming to steal. So really, it's a business, and sometimes and usually the rustlers come to those cattle which are well, because they don't want to negotiate. They come to the Katsukira Kachu, just where they are coming to. So really, just like any shop, if your shop is full of groceries or whatever, you put alarm, you put locks, you put all these. So all those things you need to insure your cattle, because these are real valuable biological assets.
Yes.
So insure them, and insure with reputable insurers. That's the first thing. Yes, you can track. That's also very important. So in some areas you find Samabera Pamombe, so that's the very basic way of tracking. And then at the higher level you can put sensors and all these trackers to really see where your cattle are, even from the comfort of your office on the computer.
Yes.
You can then track to say my beasts are there. Those are some of the things that if you are a livestock farmer, you need to think of. Obviously, the level of sophistication depends on the scale of production.
Yes.
For the the people that keep very few head of cattle, you can do Remabera, insure with low-level insurers. But when you start going to hundreds of cattle, then do proper insurance. After all, when you count the opportunity cost or the cost of losing one beast vis-a-vis the cost of insuring, you probably find that it's better to sell one beast and insure your entire head than to wait until you lose your entire head to cattle wrestling, and then you just lose everything.
It was a pleasure, Professor Jiri, having you with us today. I understand you did have a very tight schedule, but you made time for us to produce this episode. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Tight schedules are always there, but we do make time for our farmers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you had it, viewers. Thank you so much for being with us. We were looking at cattle rustling, and today's edition we were joined by Professor Obed Jiri, who was enlightening us on exactly what takes place and those who might fall vulnerable or prey to the activities of cattle rustling. It takes a collective effort. It does not end with the Ministry of Lands. It even goes on to the regulators, to those who implement, the law enforcers. We are talking of the Zimbabwe Republic Police. We'll be sure to make an effort to have a follow-up episode on cattle rustling. As you can see, we managed to record this episode here in Harare due to the dangers that come with traveling straight to Plumtree or some of the areas that he highlighted. There are dangerous areas. There are red zones that are infested with robbers and criminals. From me, your host, Zanai Manyore. I'm also on Instagram. It's W Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes. Have yourself a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.